As soon as the banner was unveiled, St. Peter's Square broke out into applause. On May 2, 2011, John Paul II was beatified. 6 years before, more than 1.5 million people gathered to bid him a final farewell in Rome. The date was April the 8th, 2005. Winds turned the pages on the Gospel, sitting atop its casket. John Paul II had passed away 6 days earlier, and the world reacted with cries of Santo subito, Saint now. Sickness consumed his life bit by bit, but it was never an obstacle to continue preaching the Word of God, even in his last moments when he didn't have a voice. John Paul II was Pope for 26 years and 5 months, one of the longest pontificates. Racking up the miles from his extensive travels around the world, he could have made the trip to the moon 3 times. With each visit, he was able to touch the hearts of people. In 1978, after a 3-day conclave, his peers elected Karol Wojtyła as successor of Peter.
Karol Wojtyła, John Paul II, is considered by many to be the most influential person of the 20th century. He has been called John Paul the Great and a superstar. Statues have been erected in his honour, and holy cards bear his name and image. Yet in spite of all these and other tokens of admiration, as with most individuals after death, the glory of the world passes quickly. Although the new church canonised John Paul II on April 27, 2014, in order to justify his endorsements of modernism, ecumenism and secular humanism, he culpably ignored the terrible plight of thousands of victims who were sexually abused by clergy in the new church. Born in Wałodus, Poland on May 18, 1920, Karol Wojtyła was given the nickname Lolus, Charlie, that eventually became Lolek. Wojtyła's closest childhood friend was a Jew named Joseph Badenstock, and said that although Wojtyła never spoke to him about Catholicism, Lolek was very interested in Judaism. Although Bishop Wojtyła was only 42 when he arrived at the Second Vatican Council, he made 22 written interventions and 8 oral interventions. He was one of only 10 Polish priests that the communists permitted to attend Vatican II. Bishop Wojtyła, who was present at every session, helped Conger and de Lubac draft the pastoral constitution of the Church in the modern world, and assisted with the writings of the Declaration on Religious Freedom and the Decree on the Media of Social Communication. During the council, Wojtyła came in close contact with many influential modernists, who later went on to elect him in 1978. Interestingly, Cardinal Garon said Wojtyła would never have been elected during the conclave of October 16, 1978, were it not for his visibility at Vatican II, where he referred to communism in a positive light, promoting ecumenism and encouraged dialogue with atheism. On May 29, 1967, Paul VI appointed 74-year-old Archbishop Wojtyła as Cardinal. Wojtyła became to realise that working with communists had its advantages, and he could travel freely and enjoy life. Those who opposed communists, like Father Jerzy Popieluszko, were tortured and killed in 1973. In 1973, Wojtyła toured Australia, the Philippines, New Guinea, France and Belgium. 2 years later, he went to Rome. In 1976, he spent 6 weeks visiting the United States. Travelling the world made Wojtyła well known to the cardinals who elected him a few years later. When the CIA realised Paul VI had only a few months to live, they sent Cardinal Cody, who had worked with them for decades, to Poland to ask Cardinal Wojtyła, Archbishop of Krakow, if he was interested in becoming Pope. During the first conclave of 1978, Wojtyła received a number of votes. Author Father Andrew Creeley accurately predicted Wojtyła would succeed John Paul I on October 3, 1978. Cardinal Karol Wojtyła had a heart exam taken and brought the results with him to the Vatican in case he was elected in the conclave, since he did not want questions about his health to be an obstacle. Author Wilton Wyon noted Wyota's unusual behaviour. He wrote, "Wyoata always takes along some reading matter wherever he goes, and during those long periods of voting in the conclave, he was calmly pursuing a book of political theory by Karl Marx. When a fellow cardinal asked if he didn't feel sacrilegious to read such an author in that sacred place, he answered with a good-natured smile, 'My conscience is clear.'" John Paul II was not the Marian Pope some may come out to be. On June 26, 2000, he released the Third Secret of Fatima. The counterfeit bears little likeness to the genuine version. Sister Lucia wrote the entire Third Secret on one sheet of paper. The Third Secret version the Vatican composed in the year 2000 version is 4 pages long. Whoever composed the counterfeit version should have at least made it the same length as the original. On October 13, 1917, Our Lady of Fatima performed a miracle of the sun that was witnessed by 70,000 people so they would believe in the apparitions. Therefore, one should summarise the Third Secret of Fatima should be important and inspiring, not commonplace and ordinary. On October 16, 2002, John Paul II boldly changed the rosary given to the world by Mary by adding the 5 luminous mysteries. John Paul II's coat of arms contains a shield, a sans serif letter M, beneath the extended right side of the distorted cross, surmounted by the papal tiara and papal keys. Although quite simple, it conveys a clear message. Although some presume the M stands for Mary, what does it really mean? John Paul II is no longer alive to answer such questions, but his legacy points to 3 loves of his life: modernism, Marxism, and Masonry. The letter M was printed on his stationery, and an elongated cross on the letter M were engraved on the lid of his coffin. Traditional Marian monograms place an aureate Old English style letter A on top of the letter M to represent the words Ave Maria, Hail Mary. A crown often surmounts these letters. John Paul II was the world's leading ecumenist. He joined in ecumenical prayer in Protestant churches, Jewish synagogues, Muslim mosques, and Buddhist and Hindu temples. He also taught to reconcile differences between Catholics and Anglicans, addressed 80,000 Muslims in Morocco, prayed at the Buddhist temple in Thailand, spoke to his great admiration of Hindus in India, apologized for Christianity's role in the destruction of native religions in North America, lays out areas of common ground between Catholics, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. According to Wikipedia, John Paul II hoped to place his church at the heart of a new religious alliance that would bring together Jews, Muslims, Christians in a great religious armada. On October 27, 1986, at the ecumenical gathering at Assisi, Italy, John Paul II joined in prayer with Buddhists, Hindus, Jain, Jewish, Muslims, Sheiks, voodoo priests, and Zoroastrian representatives, medicine men, snake worshippers, and witch doctors, and said, "With the world religions, we share a common respect for and obedience to conscience, which teaches all of us to seek the truth, to love and serve all individuals and people, and therefore make peace among nations." John Paul II failed to mention that people can have earnest consciences. One might ask, why didn't the apparent leader of the Catholic Church take the opportunity to teach the assembly about the one true God, the Blessed Trinity? His mind was on other things. In 1988, John Paul II established the Pontifical Council for Christian Unity, which fosters dialogue with all non-Catholic churches. He met with as many leaders of other Christian denominations as possible. Wyoata spoke 8 languages, wrote 5 books, 11 apostolic constitutions, 14 encyclicals, 15 apostolic exhortations, and 45 apostolic letters. His book, Love and Responsibility, opposed many teachings of Pope Pius XI's encyclical Casti Connubii. In 1994, John Paul II became the Time Man of the Year, and his picture filled the front cover of magazines more than a dozen times. Although he was the most popular person in the world at the time, what answer will be given to God for the millions of souls he led astray? To ensure the changes of Vatican II would be permanent, John Paul II appointed 3,682 bishops, 90% of those living at the time, and created 231 cardinals during his reign. He gave over 12,000 speeches, translated into 55 languages, and attended 13 World Youth Days. With his charismatic personality, John Paul II, during his extensive travels, could have converted millions, yet he made no effort to instruct non-Catholics about elements of the Catholic faith, and did next to nothing to inspire Catholics to practice their religion. Unfortunately, as a narcissist, he used the trips to further his image. During the 26-year reign of John Paul II, thousands throughout the world suffered permanent scars by being sexually molested by priests. In America alone, there were 100,000 victims of sexual abuse. In 2007, the Los Angeles Archdiocese paid out $666 million to 508 victims of clerical abuse, the largest such settlement. The question remains, why didn't John Paul II come to the victims' defence and punish the predators, priests involved and bishops who sheltered them? The Vatican instead tried to conceal the matter and silence the accusers. When the extent of the sexual abuse crisis became publicly known in the 1990s, John Paul II delayed before calling American bishops to Rome. Amazingly, no one was castigated and the matter was glossed over as if it never happened. Thomas Doyle, who worked at the Vatican Embassy in Washington, D.C., witnessed Rome's response to the American clergy sex abuse crisis firsthand. After receiving amounts from bishops, sending cables to the Vatican and viewing their responses, he became fed up and couldn't understand why John Paul II could not have understood the gravity of significant numbers of priests raping and violating little children. John Paul II completely revamped the entire canonization process in the Apostolic Constitution Divinis Perfectionis of January 25, 1983. The only miracle used to raise John Paul II to the status of blessed remains questionable. The Vatican had nagged doubts about the miracle from the beginning. Sister Marie Simon Pierre's story had seemed too good to be true. A member of the Little Sisters of the Catholic Motherhood in France, she was diagnosed in 2001 at the very young age of 40 with Parkinson's, the same disease that afflicted Pope John Paul. It is being suggested, however, that Sister Maria Simon Pierre did not have Parkinson's disease, as there was no easy way to accurately diagnose the disease short of medical autopsy. Sister Marie Simon Pierre also suffered a relapse, though the Episcopal Conference of France disputed that the relapse, which would have been thrown the purportedly miraculous nature of the cure into doubt, was anything more than a rumour. More serious questions about his life remain unanswered. Under John Paul II, the Catholic Church, modern church, was becoming a saint factory. The Pope was canonising and beatifying Christian heroes at a rate of almost one a week. More saints were canonised during John Paul II's reign than during the preceding 400 years. John Paul II canonised 482 new saints and beatified 1,338 others. John Paul II ruled the modern church for 26 years. During that period, more Catholics lost their faith than any other time in history. Some statistics show an increase in some nations, yet these numbers list baptized Catholics, not practicing ones. Many in the third world countries retain pagan, tribal beliefs and practices. Also, many support artificial birth control, adultery, cremation, euthanasia, homosexuality and premarital sex, and disagree with regular mass attendance. and the need for prayer and the seven sacraments, and the Davidic teaching of the Church regarding the divinity of Christ, the blessed Trinity, the real presence of Jesus in the Holy Eucharist, the Immaculate Conception, papal primacy and infallibility. During the horrific clergy sex abuse scandal, John Paul II looked the other way and seemed to pretend it never happened. Many bishops culpably allowed known sex abusers to prey upon innocent victims. As a result, many lives remain permanently scarred. Because of Wyota's inability to make the necessary decisions, rampant and clerical sex abuse had continued unchecked and had directly resulted in mass deteriorations from the faith in many countries. By March 2006, the official audit for the US diocese for the previous year reinforced the belief that clerical sexual abuse continued to be the biggest problem confronting the Church. There had been 783 credible new accusations of sexual abuse against American clerics lodged that year, 81% involving male victims. The American diocese paid out compensation of nearly $500 million. This represents an increase of nearly 300% over the 2004 figures of $157.8 million. Although John Paul II knew the Vatican Bank, the IOR, was corrupt to the core, he kept Marcinkus in charge and even made him his personal bodyguard on trips abroad. During the final year of John Paul II's reign, other scandals erupted, one involving Martin Frankel and an attempt to blink more than $1 billion in secured assets from the insurance companies throughout the United States. After the Frankel affair came to light, the insurance commissioners Mississippi, Tennessee, Missouri, Oklahoma and Arkansas filed a federal lawsuit against the Vatican in accordance to a Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, claiming that the Holy See was involved in a criminal conspiracy to steal the frozen assets of 9 insurance companies. The lawsuit claimed damages in excess of $600 million. Receiving word of the criminal charges, John Paul II reassured the members of the Roman Curia that the Vatican as a sovereign state was immune from such legislation. "Ignore them," he said, "it will pass." Then the Holy Father added, "We haven't lost any money, have we?" John Paul II was a great actor and charismatic individual who formed holiness deceived millions. He slyly replaced Jesus' gospel with the social gospel and Christ's teaching with his own. His words could be interpreted in many ways, so everyone across the board felt like the Pope supported their cause. His message was based on humanism and modernism. Through occasionally he spoke on spiritual topics if it was appropriate for the occasion. A good shepherd would never allow his flock to run wild, graze in poisonous pastures, be exposed to wolves, eagles, coyotes, and other predators, and act as if it wasn't his responsibility. How could a pope, a supposed vicar of Christ, tell people that all religions are equally good and encourage people to pray to their false god while he prayed to his? John Paul II was a narcissist whose life ultimately centered around himself, popularity, power, influence, and money. He advanced his cause by collaborating with Nazis, communists, modernists, and ecumenists, ultimately becoming the most popular person on earth. He turned the papacy into a travelling stage where showmanship and personality cult allowed him to spread socialism and secular humanism worldwide. Although the media idolized him, he was ultimately a man without a message. He cared nothing about uplifting his crowd spiritually or raising their eyes heavenward. There was too much glitter on the earth to pass up the chance to present itself. He was merely an entertainer, dealing with ratings, polls and popularity. His personal charisma gave him celebrity status worldwide. If John Paul II had used his outstanding talents to teach and defend the Catholic doctrine and instruct the masses, he could have converted millions. Instead, he left them in darkness and error while seeking personal acclaim and fame. People only see the face, God sees the heart.